In the United States, flu season starts each year in the fall and can carry on all the way to May. And while there are people who get the flu year-round in the U.S., December through March is where we see peak activity. The first description of what may have been the flu was by Hippocrates over 2,400 years ago in northern Greece. But it wasn't until 2,000 years later in Italy that the flu, or influenza, got its name. Most people at the time thought that outbreaks of the flu and possibly other diseases were influenced by the alignment of the stars. And it was that word, influence in English, influenza in Italian, that came to be attached to the virus. In 1743, in a publication called The Gentleman's Magazine, someone wrote, "Rome informs us that a sort of plague has broke out there, which destroys abundance of their people, and they call it the influence." The common treatment at the time for the flu, as well as most other ailments, was bleeding the patient, or bloodletting. Now, this wasn't just drawing a little blood. Bloodletting, at least for the flu, commonly meant allowing a patient to bleed until they were pale, weak, and sometimes unconscious. This was a common practice all the way up to the 19th century. Younger people may remember more vividly the talk of the swine flu outbreak in 2009, or even the fear of the avian flu in the 90s, but it was the 1918 Spanish flu that stands in infamy as the deadliest outbreak of influenza. From 1918 to 1920, the H1N1 influenza virus infected an estimated 500 million people, killing somewhere between 50 and 100 million, which was between 3 and 5% of the total world population at the time. While there was an effort to create a working flu vaccine during and after the Spanish flu, it wasn't until the 1930s, after a London scientist had successfully isolated the flu virus, that a working vaccine was finally made. For the next 80 years, the flu vaccine would go through a lot of changes. The World Health Organization sponsors labs around the world to conduct surveillance on the virus, watching for changes and predicting behavior. They make predictions on which strains of the virus are going to be the most common each season, and they choose 3 or 4, 2 strains of influenza A and 1 or 2 strains of influenza B to include in the vaccine. Some years, despite all the surveillance, testing, forecasting, and effort, the vaccine just isn't very effective, and a lot more people get sick. This is one of those years. You are listening to the Ignorant Parenting Podcast. If you are enjoying the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. That helps the show be found by more people. My name is Chris Egan. I am your host, and we're going to jump right back into the show. Right now, January 2018, if you live in the U.S. in any state other than Hawaii, the flu is widespread in your state. If you got the flu shot, you may be okay, and you may not. A lot of people find that fact frustrating. So frustrating that they don't get the flu shot. So today we're going to talk about the effect on the general public and something called herd immunity when large numbers of people choose not to get the flu shot. And we're going to talk about why some years the flu shot is less effective than other years. Herd immunity is the ability for a group of people to collectively resist sickness or disease because there are enough members of the group who are individually resistant or immune to that disease. The immune members of the group are essentially keeping the disease from spreading to those members who are not immune. So in the case of influenza, when too many people choose not to get the flu shot, they are essentially opening up paths for the disease to spread more easily. For all the different groups that people belong to, schools, office coworkers, and the country as a whole, this breaks down that group's herd immunity. This is one reason why you see articles like the one published at Popular Science last year in October. The article titled, "You Should Get the Flu Shot Even If It Won't Keep You from Getting Sick," explains that the people in our society who are most vulnerable to the flu are often the same people that cannot get the flu shot. This includes infants under 6 months of age and people who are suffering from other chronic immune diseases. Since these people can't get the flu shot, they have to rely on other people to maintain herd immunity and keep them from getting sick. There are many reasons that people choose not to get a flu shot. But this year, a lot of people are pointing to reports, some that may or may not be accurate, about the overall effectiveness of the shot. Australia's flu season peaks in August, and they had a particularly bad one, where the vaccine was said to have only been 10% effective. People extrapolated that data and assumed that it would apply to our follow-up flu season, the 2017-2018 flu season in the U.S. But that isn't necessarily correct. The truth is that we don't know yet. The CDC reports on the effectiveness of our flu vaccine every year, but hasn't yet released their numbers. As everyone has probably heard, even when the flu shot isn't effective at keeping you from getting the flu, the CDC states that it can still lessen the effects and shorten the overall time that you are sick, so they still recommend that you get the flu shot. But the question remains, why isn't the flu shot effective? Is it a matter of picking the wrong strains to go into the vaccine? And why can't they just include all the strains of the flu in this shot, instead of guessing each year? Well, the answer to the latter question, why can't they include all the strains, is that it wouldn't fit in a single shot. Within the shot, there has to be a certain amount of protein to accompany each strain of the virus. And with technically thousands of subtypes of the flu in existence, it just wouldn't be realistic to include that quantity in one injection. Furthermore, we don't know how the body would react to that many strains at one time. Probably not well. At best, including a few more strains of the flu in the vaccine would still likely require multiple shots for each person, and one could expect this to decrease the amount of people that decide to get the vaccine, thus further decreasing herd immunity. So theoretically, it could create more problems. For now, they include 3 or 4 strains, 2 strains from type A and 1 or 2 from type B. Some people assume that the problem this year is that they picked the wrong strain for the vaccine, but that isn't the case either. They correctly identified and included in the vaccine the strain that is giving us the most trouble this year, the one infecting the most people. That strain is the type A H3N2 flu virus. The problem with the H3N2 virus is that our current vaccine technology just doesn't work as well when that is the predominant strain. And there are 2 reasons that the CDC cites. First, all strains of the flu virus are subject to frequent genetic changes or mutations. But the H3N2 is unique in the fact that it more frequently mutates in ways that can make our vaccine less effective. So between the time that the vaccine is created and the flu season begins, the strain, that H3N2 strain, may have mutated, and the antibodies that our body created in response to the flu shot do not keep us from getting sick. Second, the process for growing the flu virus for vaccines involves the use of chicken eggs. When this method is used, it can cause the virus to mutate. This applies to all strains of the flu that are grown using chicken eggs, but again, the H3N2 strain is more likely to result in what are called antigenic changes, which change our immune response to the virus. The CDC says you can usually expect the effectiveness for the vaccine to be about 30% on years that the H3N2 strain is the most dominant. So this bears the question, Is this the best we can do? 30% effective is poor, isn't it? Well, the future may have a lot better in store for us. Scientists are currently working on a universal vaccine, one that protects us from all strains of the flu. They say the universal flu vaccine could, quote, take the guesswork out of seasonal flu protection by boosting the immune system's capacity to combat many viral strains, end quote. But it's not ready, and the research may continue for some time, despite the fact that the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases has made developing a universal flu vaccine a top priority. One of the biggest problems slowing development of the universal vaccine is a lack of funding for the National Institute of Health. So for now, what we have available to us today is what we should expect for probably several years. The best thing we can do to limit the spread of the flu, besides getting the flu shot, is to not go out when you're sick and keep your kids home from school or daycare when they're sick. And as difficult and crazy as it may sound, it may even be a good idea to consider not going out when anyone in your house is sick, because between 5 and 30% of people who were infected with the flu in clinical tests were asymptomatic, meaning they showed no symptoms. So if you have been exposed to people with the flu, there is a possibility that although you feel perfectly fine, you could still spread the flu to other people. You almost start feeling sick just talking about this stuff, don't you? And honestly, I have no memory of caring about or discussing the flu season before I had kids. But now that I have 2 little ones in daycare and we catch every cough, cold, virus, bug, or rash that any kid within 60 miles of us has had, I am just getting sick of getting sick. Hopefully, my kids will have stronger immune systems when they are older because of the variety of bugs and bacteria they're exposed to today. But it would really be nice not to have to worry about the flu. Thank you for listening to Ignorant Parenting. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave us a review on iTunes. Those reviews help the show to be found by more people. If you would like more information about the topics we discussed today, please visit ignorantparenting.com for the show notes and sources. If you are able to contribute monetarily to help cover the cost of producing this show, please head to ignorantparenting.com and click on the link that says Make a Donation. Any money you contribute will go directly to keeping this show on the air and making more episodes. Please stay tuned after the music for a trailer for another great podcast. I am Chris Egan. Thank you for listening to Ignorant Parenting. Have a great day. It's true. There may never be a better time to look into the future and just see you. Now the devilish misconception that I'm sure you know, not everybody gets a ticket to the show. But what I found is what I thought. A higher power keeps the back door unlocked. Now you may not feel that it's justified, but I promise, little one, it's true. There may never be a better time to look into the future and just see you. Now when you get free and you find the sun, just realize you're not the only one. And you can tell your mama and tell her well, You can tell your mama to go to hell.
Hey guys, I'm Alan.
And I'm Alexis, and we are the hosts of the Parenting in Real Life podcast. We had 4 kids in 4 years and are pregnant with baby number 5.
People think we're crazy, and they might be right, but most of the time we love it. In our podcast, we discuss trending parenting topics and share tips on how to be better parents.
Parenting is hard, which is why we try not to take ourselves too seriously.
Every week, we share a parenting in real life moment about a crazy event in our family to help you feel better about yours.
Whether you're a new parent or have a few years under your belt, any parent can get something out of parenting in real life, even if it's just a good laugh.
Just search Parenting in Real Life wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us on Instagram at PIRL Podcast. Ba-dam-bam.